So good afternoon. I think that we can start. So thank you so much for having registered to this today webinar. My name is Mariangela Lupo and I'm part of the EPTRI coordination team. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the first series of webinar entitled Journey in Pediatric Medical Devices from Regulation to Clinical Studies and Patients' Involvement. This is 3 non-propedeutic webinars that will deal with different aspects of the medical devices field, which are regulatory, clinical, and developmental cases, studies, and patients' involvement. Today is the first day of this webinar series, and we will have the webinar entitled The Evolution of the Regulatory Framework of Medical Devices in Europe. Then there will be the second webinar entitled Magnifying Glass in the World of the Medical Device Development, that will be held on the 25th of November at 11. And the third one will be held on the 16th of December, and it will be on health technology design for children with children. So I would like to welcome you to this today webinar that is aimed to provide a more deepened insight in the general aspect on medical devices, absorption issues, the new requirements and changes compared to the older one, which are the specific needs to be covered according to the medical device regulation to develop safer and adequate medical device for pediatric patients. I remind you that this today webinar is recorded, and it will be about a 1-hour webinar. So we will have the 3 presentations of the speaker. That is the Professor Paola Minghetti, then we will have a presentation of Dr. Umberto Musazzi, and finally the presentation of Dr. Ludger Toyhaus. At the end of the webinar session, there will be a session about question and answer, where you can ask for any further question or information do you want to have regarding the presentation that have been held today. You can write your question in the chat box, or at the end you can raise your hand, you can speak and make your question, pose your question to the speaker. I kindly ask you to please put your microphone unmuted in order that all the speakers can everyday presentation. So thank you so much, and I will leave the floor to Professor Paola Minghetti. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mariangela. Thank you to EPTRI and to everyone that is here today with us to discuss about regulation of medical device. I try to be to transmit to you some idea, and then we can if you have questions, we can discuss about that. We are working in this world where we have a different kind of products, and all of that are related to the health, and more or less all of them are regulated with a directive or European regulation. The only one that is without a real European law is the herbal product, and in this case, in every member state, we can have different situations. But as far as all the others, food for special groups, medicinal product, cosmetics, biocides, and of course medical device, we have since many years directive or regulation that are used in all the member states. What is important is the correct classification of an health product. In fact, as you can see, or you saw in the previous slide, in some case, for example, medicinal product and medical device, we have the same scopus, the same aim, the same medical need or same need to solve with the product. And also in this case, and this is the case of medicinal product and medical device, is much more important to have the correct classification, because the correct classification is of fundamental importance to guarantee the safe and rational use of the product. In fact, requirements and procedures are different the legislation is different, and in every case is tailored for the category. So it's important to make a correct classification. Why this is important, especially for medical device and medicinal product? Because they have the same aim. They both the category are related to product that can cure, prevent, or make a diagnosis of a disease. So, which is the difference between medical device and medicinal product? The difference is not in the purpose of use. In fact, when we think about medical devices, we have to remember to take in consideration that the intended use is really medical purpose. And the medical purpose is reported, is indicated by the manufacturer in the labeling of the device or in every information of the device. So which is the difference? How we can decide if the product that can be used to cure a pathology is a medicinal product or medical device? The difference is the mechanism of action. In fact, if the mechanism of action is pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic, the product will be a medicinal product. If the mechanism of action is different, that can be physical mechanic mechanism of action, the product will be a medical device, MD. And the difference is not related to the fact that the product is a substance or contain a substance. In fact, we can have medical devices that are made of substance, and we have medical devices that are made of, it is an object, but containing a substance. In this case, the substance, if it is a drug substance and mean a pharmacological active substance, has to have only what we call ancillary function. So it's not a primary function, but it's only ancillary. And in the case of product containing substance, and in the case of products that are made of substance, of course, the classification is much more difficult. As an example, I can show this one, the bone cement. Bone cement is a medical device. In fact, the main intended use has been obtained by a physical mechanism of action, that is the fixation of the prosthesis. But in that bone cement, we can have an antibiotics. But the antibiotics, the aim of antibiotics is to reduce the possibility of contracting an infection during the surgery. So it's not a way to administer to the children or to a person the antibiotics, but it is only the idea that when we use the medical device, we can have a problem, and we can avoid the problem by loading an antibiotics to the bone cement. So in this case, it's very clear that even if there is an active substance, the final product is a medical device. Another example, a little bit more complicated, is the solution for transport, nutrition, or storage of organs. These are solutions, that means are substance. But in the past, they were classified in some member states like drugs, in other member states as medical device, and the situation is still not completely solved. So we have some product in one and the other classification, even if the idea is that if there are it is not a pharmacological mechanism of action, but it's only the idea to give a solution, a nutrient, and so in this case we can consider the product like a medical device. There are also products that in some countries or in the idea of some organisms are classified as medical device, but really they are not. For example, all drug preparation devices, all the apparatus that we need to prepare a drug is not a medical device, but is simply an apparatus and following completely different legislation. Or Other products that are not considered medical device are, as you can see here, for example, sanitary napkins, teen whiteners, or also tattoo inks. We have some problem with the tattoo. In fact, in the past, tattoo inks and also tattoo syringe apparatus were not considered medical device. With the new regulation, I will show you later, that now the apparatus, the syringe are considered medical device, but the inks are still not classified in this category. And this can be a potential risk for the health of the people. So what's happened as far as the regulation of this product? Around 1980 and something, in Europe, there was the first discussion on medical device. Only to remember you, the first directive on medicinal product, it is the number 65 of the year 65. So they take care of the medical device a little bit later. And we have, at the moment, a completely different situation in every member state. For example, in Italy, we have what we call presidi medico-chirurgico. That is a particular category that is not present in other member states. So the idea, of course, was to have a free market, of course. And so the idea was to removing all the technical barrier to have the free market in the member state. At the beginning, the first directive was in the 90s, and it was related to active implantable medical device that are, of course, the medical device with a high level of risk. After that, other directive arrived, medical device, in vitro diagnostic medical device, and so on. Then the directive were modified, and then around the 2010, 2015, there was the idea that we don't need any more directive, but the situation was so harmonized among all the different member states that it was possible to have a regulation. In fact, the regulation is, it's important to go from a directive to a regulation, because when we have a regulation, we don't need to implement the legislation in the member state. So we are sure that the same rules will be used in all the member states. So the regulation was approved in the 1917, and the idea was to have the full application in 2020. Then we have COVID, and then we have 2021. But this is not really very important. The important thing that now we have a regulation that means that in every member state we have the same rule, the same level of safety, efficacy, evaluation, and a free market. This directive is different from, it's a different approach. We consider the one of the medicinal product. You know that you cannot go on the market with a medicinal product if you don't have a pre-authorization. Really, we need two pre-authorization, one for the production and one for the marketing authorization. In this case, the idea was completely different. It's what we call the directive of the new regulatory approach. There are other, for example, toys or electric apparatus and so on. And this new regulatory approach means that when you find on the product the marks here, the consumer is sure that the product has been produced following the rules, the European rules. And so this is a little bit different from the completely pre-marketing approval. Another difference is what is the meaning of manufacturer. We have to remember that when we think about manufacturers, when we think about, we spoke about drug, manufacturing is the one that produces the drug. In this case, manufacturing is the one that put the product on the market. It's not related to the real production. In fact, the manufacturer take care of the production and the marketing of the product. Of course, It doesn't mean that he has to produce the product. He can also ask to other company to produce the product, but at the end, he has the responsibility of the production and of the marketing. So the manufacturer is the person who at the end assumes the responsibility of the product. How we can guarantee the quality of the product and so certify the conformity of medical device? In the regulation and in the directive before that, there are the essential requirements. There is a list of the essential requirements, and the manufacturer has to conform the product to the essential requirement, following harmonized standards and making a risk analysis. Then a technical file is needed, and the technical file will be discussed with the notified body for the class with higher risk. And in the other case, really only in the case in class 1, we don't need to discuss with the notified body, but in any case, it has to be ready and can be evaluated if there are some problems by the national authority. And this is another important thing. We don't have an European authority. We don't have an European agency as we have for the drug or for the food, EFSA, or for the chemical substance. In case of medical device, the decision is different. We have national authority and notified body, but we don't have an European authority. Which are the essential requirements for medical device? We have general requirements, and in this case, we have to take care of safety and health of patient and users. And this is another thing that is important in medical device, that every time you have to take care not only of people that will use the product, but also users. I mean, the people that administrate the product or in any case work with the product. The other important thing is that the manufacturer has to perform a risk analysis, and in any case, he has to minimize the risk associated with the use in every time. Then we have a special requirement regarding design and manufacturers, and of course, these are completely different in consideration of the type of product. We have a medical device very, very different among them from substance, so chemical are important for other products, for example, a big apparatus for diagnosis, and so of course the requirements are different. Then we have the another important requirement that were regarded the information supplied. That is because many of the medical devices are used by lay people, so they're used by consumer, by patients, and it's very important that in the leaflet, in the manual for use, the information are very, very clear. And if they are not clear, of course, this is has to be reported to the notified body and has to be, of course, changed. So the first things that the industry has to do is to do a risk analysis of the product. And this is the key element in the process that lead the manufacturer to declare the conformity of the product. And this risk analysis has to be performed before the first time that the product will go on the market, and then it has to be continuously evaluated during the time. Following the risk analysis, the product has to be classified from the manufacturer in one of the class. Class 1 in case of lowest risk, class 2 A and B is medium risk, and class 3 highest risk of the product. There are harmonized standards, different harmonized standards, and as in other field, harmonized standard is always voluntary. The application is voluntary, even if you don't use harmonized standard. There are, of course, you have to justify in a very important way. Otherwise, the notified body will ask you why you didn't use it, and it could be really a problem. So if it is possible, it's always better to apply the standards. We have international standard, European standard, national standard, and of course we can use all. It's dependent on which type of analysis we have to do or test we have to perform, and we have to go through all this kind of standard. Okay, the new regulation, which are the main goal, why we had the regulation and why it is different, or in what it is different from the directive. The idea is to strengthen the governance structure and coordination, to shift from a pre-approval to a life cycle approach. So that was, I told you that the risk analysis has to be performed before you go in the market, but then you have to go on to considering during all the life cycle of the product. Something is changing also as far as the notified bodies. So the requirement of notified body, for example, the type and the number of persons that work in the notified body are changed, and the Commission, the European Commission, will evaluate in a very, very deep way the characteristic of the notified body before approving them. And another new, differences from the past is the clinical investigation. There was also in the directive some medical device who needed clinical investigation, but now it is much more important, or at least you have to justify. If you don't have clinical investigation, you can use also literature, but that has to be well justified. And then new requirements for transparency and this is very important, traceability. That is because we have really an European market, and so we need to have an important system for have traceability of the product. Because if we have some problem, we have to take out some batch or some product. Of course, the information has to arrive in all the member states, in every hospital or in every pharmacy. And the other things, the new role of the European Agency, of the National Agency of Drug, when in the medical device we have a substance that is considered a drug with a pharmacological activity. You can see here how it is different, because only looking at the number of recital of definition of articles, that is not the same sum of the two directives, but it's much more impressive. That means that it is much more regulated than in the past, this kind of product. What else we have new in the new regulation? The idea is to have, and we hope, and I think this is true, we will see in the next future, but in any case, the idea is to have a better protection of public health and safety of the patient. And in this sense, for example, we have the inclusion of devices with non-medical purposes. There are devices that were not considered in other category, that were not cosmetics or other things. For example, contact lens for aesthetic purpose, or filler, that was product that you use under the skin, so it is an injection, so it cannot be considered cosmetic. In the past, it was not considered medical device. Now, following the inclusion in this annex, they are considered medical device, even if they have only aesthetic purpose. And this is, of course, is an important thing. As I told you, in case of tattoo or epilation or so on, the apparatus are considered, while in case of tattoo, unfortunately, the inks they are not considered yet. Other news are, for example, as I told you before, the clinical investigation, the rules to how to perform and when perform clinical investigation are changed, and what we expect is that in the future it will be very difficult to have a new MD without doing clinical investigation or at least clinical evaluation. And another new things that we really, at the moment, we don't know exactly which would be the impact on the product is the stricter classification for drugs-based device. So what we expect is probably that in the future, medical device products that now are classified as medical device based on substance, in the future could be reclassified in other category, for example, or health food or medicinal product. This could be a problem, especially for Italy, because in Italy we have a lot, many medical device made of substance. And also there is a little bit different classification of the product in considering what is invasive, what is in contact with the body or go in the body. And another thing that is important is the introduction of this UD system. What is this system? Is the unique device identification. And of course, now that the computer and all the software are much more used than in the past, it is easier to have the identification and have the system that can use all around Europe to identify the product. This is important because we have many million of medical devices, much more than in other category. So it's important to find a way to classify the product. This device identification system comes from the one that we had in Italy, and so this was selected among other different systems that were used in other member states, and it takes care of the anatomy of the body, so where the product will act and which kind of action it has. Other things that could be remembered today is we have higher transparency and attention to patients, and in this case we will have a database that could be available not only for health person but also for public demand. And another thing is the European requirement for a card for patient with the implant, because now we have traceability of the implant, but they are different in every member state, different for different kind of prostheses. The idea is to have a system that could be similar or the same all around Europe. Other things is the better coordination between member states for market surveillance and surveillance activities, and this is very important in consideration that we don't have an European authority. So of course we need much more coordination among the different member states, and we have a coordination group. The coordination group will take care of the guidelines that are needed, are not mandatory in every member state, but of course if there is a guideline that is elaborated with people of all different member states, of course will be used in all the member states. And so in this sense we can have a better coordination among all. And another thing is a confirmation and strengthening of European joint assessment procedures for notified body. In the past, we have some problem with some notified body. So the idea of the Commission is to make a stronger evaluation of these bodies, in consideration that all the authorization procedure or the evaluation of the technical notes are given to the notified body. To conclude, the last slide is related to combination product, because this is another field of, I think, very interesting and very important, because it is very difficult sometimes to classify the product, because we can have medicinal product and medical device together in the same pack, and it can be at the end classified as medicinal product or medical device. Of course, it depends on which is the primary mechanism of action. So if it is a syringe with the drug, and the syringe is the primary package of the drug, but at the same time it can be used to administer the drug, this will be a medicinal product classified in combination product. And in this case, the drug agency, national agency or European agency, has to ask to the notified body for the medical, for the MD. In the case of ancillary, the product will be a medical device. And also we have another situation where the two products are sold separately, so are not in the same pack, but they has to be used to combine. And in this case, in the label of medicinal product and in the label of medical device, of course, there is needed a cross-reference to the other product. So as you can see, we have many different situations, and I'm sure that this new regulation that at the moment seems very difficult and very complicated to be applied, will be clear more clear in the next year, and in any case it will be useful for have a safer product and also to have a better identification and classification of this product. Thank you for your attention, and of course I will be happy to answer if there are, or to discuss with you later.
Thank you so much, Professor Minghetti, for this very nice presentation. I would like now to give the floor to Dr. Umberto Musazzi.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, sorry.
Yes, just a second that I give you the presenter in order that you can share your screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, you can see.
Yeah, that's great.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, if you can put it. Okay, that's nice.
Okay, perfect. Thank you to all to join the webinar. Thank you to APTE2 to organize this webinar about the upgrade and update in the field of a medical device. And I would like to start with this slide that is the same slide that Professor Minghetti presented some minutes before, but only to highlight you that together with the evolution of the regulatory framework, we have a different kind of technical document like a guideline or guidance that have been released by the Commission in order to support the notified body, the competent authorities, the manufacturer, in order to meet the ideals, the aims of the directives and the regulation, in order to apply to put on the field the information that are put, the provision that are put in the regulatory framework. The first that had been released was MedDev, that started to be released from 1993, from the Directive 42, and met the need of the Commission to try to push all the stakeholders through a common approach on medical device. Therefore, the Commission identified the need to build up and create a different kind of working group that have to match the requirement, the need of authorities, stakeholder, manufacturer, in order to define some document that maybe are not legal binding, but include some important aspect that could be useful for harmonize the medicinal device market. In this field, the Commission create a different kind of working group that act by their work or act different kind of consultation process with a third part, and so collaborate a lot with industries, academic field, regulatory field, and so on, and start to release a different kind of guideline that enter in detail on different kind of scope, different kind of aim. We have a very general guideline like the 2.1 that focused on borderline, on define which is an ancillary medicinal substance that can be used in a medical device, or other MedDev guideline, like those for conformity assessment, those for clinical investigation, some for guide notified body in their activities, some on post-market surveillance, and so on. However, all of these documents are based on the action of the Commission. There is not any rule, any provision in the directive that give a regulatory status to this guideline. Is a consensus document that have been used in the European Union. But when the regulation enter in force, as you can see in the slide showed by Professor Minghetti, we have a lot increase of the article with respect to previous guideline, and some of that article that are included in the regulation include also an embryonal structure for promoting the harmonization and the coordination of all the authorities, the national authorities, in the action of the Commission. For the first time in a regulation on medical device, we have the creation of a coordination group. The coordination group that was detailed in terms of structure by Article 103 and in terms of task by 105. I would like only to highlight one stuff. The fact that in the task of the coordination group, we have the development of guidance to support the Commission, to support a notified body, to support manufacturer, but also we have the coordination group must assist the competent authorities and the Commission in order to provide harmonized classification, in order to provide harmonized provision guidance on clinical investigation approach, on vigilance and market surveillance, and so on. So it's not centralized authorities, but is the first step in order to push all the regulatory framework on medical device in order to promote the harmonization and the coordination among all the different authorities in the member states. Of course, the coordination group can't work on all of these aspects connected with medical device by only one group, and therefore the regulation itself allows the coordination group to build up a subgroup that can work alone or in collaboration with third parties in order to meet and to define specific topic. For example, in this slide, I reported all of the working groups that have been established in the last 3 years and actually are very active since 2019, more or less. They started to release a different kind of endorsement document, the so-called MDs guidance, that aim to substitute the previous MedDev guideline. If you can see in this slide, we have a guidance that was released in early October on the classification that substituted the equivalent MedDev guidance. But moreover, we have a new field in terms of endorsed document and guideline. For example, due to the COVID outbreak, we have a lot of guidance in terms of how to provide the conformity assessment of the device involved in the COVID and so on. Or for new technology like software, like cybernetic security, all these aspects have been taken care and evaluated by the subgroup of the coordination group. I would like to give you 2 examples on the action on which kind of technical document can be helpful for authorities or manufacturers in order to drive a correct classification and to understand, to put the light in some dark part. But we start about the classification. As told before Professor Minghetti, the medicinal product are classified, the medical device, sorry, are classified based on risk classes. And MedDev 2.4 provide additional information for provide a correct classification of medical device. Now we have the new guidance of coordination group on the classification, but also we have the so-called Helsinki procedure that put on the paper, put on the field a correct procedure in order to allow the competent authority to share information, to share knowledge, to reach a consensus about some borderline on some doubtful classification of medical device. In this case, is a very strict procedure in order to reach a coordinated, harmonized classification of medical device in order to limit the possibility that a similar product can be marketed in the European Union by a different classification, a different risk class. But focused on the guidance released in early October, the guidance can be divided in two parts. The first reply and put all the definition reported in Annex 8 of the regulation and provide additional information to manufacturing in order to guide and to allow them to understand if its product can be classified as, for example, active medical device or not. Moreover, we have an explanation of all the rules contained in the annex. There are more or less 22 rules. Some are more general, related to broad class of medical device, for example, non-invasive device, invasive device, active devices. Other are more specific. We have a rule for nanomaterial, Rule 19. We have a rule for device that is composed by substances, Rule 21, and so on. For each of them, for each of broad class of medical device, the guidance reported an algorithm, a decision tree that can help the manufacturer to drive its classification on its product. I'm sorry for the resolution, but this is an image take from the guidance itself. So if you are interested in order to understand more in depth about for example, the algorithm on active devices, I would like to suggest to go to read the guidance itself, but only to show that each product can follow its route to the correct classification based on this algorithm. And it's also important to take in mind the intended purpose of the medical device. For example, the same product, a same X-ray machine, can have a different purpose, can have a therapeutic or a diagnostic purpose. And based on that, can be classified based on class 9 based on Rule 9 in class 2B, or based on Rule 10 for diagnostic purpose, also in class 2B, but the rule is different, and therefore the decision tree that have to be followed by the manufacturer change. The left part on the algorithm includes Rule 11 on software. This is really, or more or less, new in the regulatory framework in the field, and for the first time in Europe we have a clear definition how classify software for medical purpose based on their risk. Actually, the guidance define two pillars in order to define the risk of software: the significance of information provided and the healthcare situation, the patient condition in which the software has been used. Therefore, for provide a correct classification of the software, we have to keep in mind not only the intended purpose, but also the intended population of the device, the context of use, and information that have been provided. Regarding the software, it is also important to highlight that there is not any difference from a regulatory point of view between medical app and standalone software. And therefore, the type of interconnection between software and hardware don't affect the risk or the class risk of the software itself. Of course, if the software has been developed to control a specific medical device, it cannot be split and have to be, for example, a software for controlling a X-ray machine. of course, the software is a unique body together with the hardware, and in this case was classified in the same class of the X-ray machine. But only to give you some example based on the different healthcare situation of patient condition. Well, if we wanted to develop a software that help a user in order to understand their fertility status, so the risk connected to, of course, maybe the patient, the software, the user maybe have wrong information about their fertility status, but is not so critical for his health point of view, and therefore the regulator defined that this software had the lower risk and were classified in class 1. Moreover, on the other side, when we need to monitor some physiological processes, the classification change based on the use, the time of use of the software, if it's a continuous use or not. For example, if we want to devise software for checkups, for monitoring physiological process at home, for example, all telemedicine software, the software have been classified into A. On the contrary, if we wanted to develop a software that can support the activity in intensive care, have to monitor the vital physiological process of a patient in emergency care and so on, are classified in the higher risk class, that is 2B. On the contrary, if we wanted to base our risks, if we would like to provide therapeutic suggestion to healthcare professionals and so on, the significance of the information that we provide is the key factor in order to understand how the software exposes the user, the patient, to risk. And therefore, if you can see the decision tree, we can get that those software that are designed in order to provide image analysis that help healthcare professionals to make a treatment decision, to have a diagnosis decision, was classified the highest risk. It was class 3 software, class 3 the medical device, and therefore the significant information I provided is so critical for the patient health that such software, the conformity assessment should be of such product should be those of class 3, the medical device. However, okay, this is an example, but in the guidance we have a lot of other kind of decision tree algorithm in order to help a manufacturer to provide the correct classification of their medical device. But in the guidance 24, don't all the situation can be matched, don't all the situation can find an answer, and apparently some situations are more dark to be understood. There are some borderline situations. Actually, we have a MedDev 2.1 in order to understand and to drive manufacturing in order to do the correct classification of borderline, and in order to decide if it is a medical device or medicinal product or cosmetic and so on. We expect to have by the end of the year a new borderline guidance released by coordination group, but also we have two different guidance focused on defining the process that allowed the authorities to share information, for example, the health procedure, but also to consult the competent authorities, for example, EMI, for evaluating the ancillary action of a medical substance that is present in a medical device, and how to perform the process, how the consultation have to be taken in consideration and have to be followed. In order to provide some information, since we are still waiting for the guidance on coordination group, I would like to show some data, some information from the section A on MedDev 2.1. And of course, these information are temporary since they are overcome when the new guidance have been released. But it's also important to remember, as told before by Professor Minghetti, that in order to understand, in order to put the light in the dark situation, to define borderline situation, the identification of the principal mode of action of the product is the key factor. If we have a pharmacological, immunological, metabolic means, an action, we have a medicinal product. If we have a physical means for a medical purpose, we have generally a medical devices. But from a regulatory point of view, which is a correct definition of pharmacological, immunological, metabolic means? All of us have a definition, have clear in mind what pharmacological mean, but from our legal point of view, from a regulatory point of view, there is the directive, the regulation don't provide a clear definition. Well, MedDev 2.1 provided the definitions. For give you an example, pharmacological mean was based on 3 pillars. You need an interaction between what? Between the molecule, a subject of the investigation, and a cellular constituent. That cannot be a cellular constituent of our human body. Maybe it can be a bacteria, can be a virus that have a pathologic action on our body. And such interaction induce a direct response on the cellular constituent. We need these 3 pillars in order to define a pharmacological mean. And as well, we have a similar definition for immunological and metabolic. I would like only to clarify you that for metabolic means, is not related to the fact that when we have a metabolism of the substance, so we have a metabolic mechanism of action. The metabolic mechanism of action is focused on a cellular constituent, not on the pharmacokinetic of the product, or of the substance. Of course, but which data are needed? What we need for define a pharmacological metabolic need is enough of the claim of the manufacturer. The guideline, the guidance clearly identified that we need the scientific data to provide a correct classification of the mechanism of action. Therefore, the manufacturer labeling the claim is not enough, and both the manufacturer and the authorities have to refer to specific scientific data. But based on this classification, it's clear that in some borderline cases are clearly identified the class, the administered category of the product. For example, hemostatic product can be classified as medicinal device or medical devices or medicinal product based on the fact that its main mechanism of action is physical or pharmacological. But however, due to the high innovation in the medical device field, the guideline itself is not enough, and therefore the working group on borderlines and classification started to release and upgrade a manual on borderline, which contain a different kind of example that can help the manufacturer to provide a correct classification. Only before concluding, I would like to show you only an example that could be tricky, also considering a different administered classification between US and European Union of plaster and transdermal patch. In the case of the United States regulatory framework, generally transdermal patch or local applied patch like plaster are generally classified as combination product. The device is the adhesive, the medical substance is the drug that's loaded inside. In EU, generally such dosage form are classified as medicinal product, since the adhesive plaster or patch is defined as an excipient of the formulation, is composed by the excipient or classified as excipient from a regulatory point of view. But in some cases, this different classification puts some criticism in order to provide a correct classification. For example, plaster loaded with capsaicin, in some cases, in some member states, have been classified as based on Rule 13th as device incorporating a medical substance and therefore classified in Class 3. However, the working group on borderline classification clearly stated that since we have a monograph on capsaicin in European Pharmacopoeia, and since the plant containing capsaicin, for example, capsicifocus and capsium oleoresin, are considered by European Scientific Coordination on Physiotherapy as herbal medical product, so we cannot consider that a plaster loaded with capsaicin as a device containing an ancillary medical substance. We have to classify this product as a medicinal product, not a medical device. And with that, I would like to thank you for the attention. I am available for questions at the end of the section, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Umberto Musazzi, for this presentation. I would now give the floor to Dr. Ludger Toyshaus. I'm really sorry if maybe my pronunciation of the name is not so correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can you share your screen now?
Yes, I will do. 1 sec. So,
in the meantime, I remind all the participants that if they want, they can already starting writing in the chat box some question that they would like to address to the speaker.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We see your screen. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me or for having me here. My name is Ludger Toyshaus. I'm a pediatric surgeon from Lübeck, this is north in Germany, and I'm head of an active research group who's dealing with the development of pediatric medical devices. And actually, I would like to talk today about safety and innovation in the context of pediatric medical device. And actually, I would like to talk about regulatory affairs for this topic. And why is the question? Because it's really important, the topic regulatory affairs for me as a clinician as well as a researcher. Nothing to disclose. And when we are talking about children, we all know it's a special group of our society, and it's a special vulnerable group which is really worth protecting. And we have always this problem of that we would like to protect our children from research. This is also based on a historical framing as well. But as well, we would like to protect the children through research. Because children are actually living a different life than adult ones, but they have also the right to get access to the same medical technology as adults, I think. So I would like to describe the path between safety and innovation, and this will have a potential as well as challenges for the patient care. And as well, because I'm a surgeon, I would like to start with my surgical view. And as a surgeon, when I'm working in the operation room, there's a kind of autonomy, but what I'm doing, because in an emergency situation, I have to save the patient's life, and so I have a special autonomy to reach this goal. And every day, the surgeon who's doing surgery in the operation worldwide are trying to improve the surgical procedures as well as the instruments, and they have this kind of surgeons are tinkering all the time, and as well as you know, we have rapidly advancing technology. But on the other side, what is paramount? Patient safety, as well as you know, and we have to accept that variation can lead to errors and complications. And as well, if you have a new procedure or new technology, you have to compare to the old one. And if you introduce your technology too fast, then the old one is too fast gone, and you can't do a good RCT trial actually. And we are always looking for evidence-based surgery. So this is where I come from my clinical side. And how is innovation achieved in medical technology? As you know, there are clinical needs. There's always this technology push going on. There also you have to be working economically. And the clinical needs can come from the patients, that they have unmet needs, the users like me as a clinician, and there are also some clinical needs from the society. And if you have asked this question 2 years ago, what is an emergency? Yes, COVID-19 is an emergency as well as a clinical need or clinical push for innovation, as you know. So, and if you are talking about medical technology, there are a lot of new technology in front of us, and it's really a cool thing for me actually as a researcher, developer. We have to see new robotics for doing surgery. We have this field of 3D printing. We have new sensorics, micro and nanotechnology. We have new materials which might be resorbable implants. We have to talk about all the digital components like virtual reality, mixed reality. There are a lot of digital health applications. There's an amount of new data science, and we have to talk about AI or machine learning. And there are also autonomous or assistant systems who will be there for the patient care. But this will be a real problem if you think on new frontiers and new grounds, if you think about regulatory affairs or the field of ELSA. This is ethical, legal, social aspects. And if you think about a robot, the system is there's increasing complexity of the system, and at the same time you would like to have a product and patient safety. And this is can really be difficult to achieve this aim. And sometimes the risks are not yet known. For example, if you are thinking about new materials, and sometimes it's really hard or really difficult to measure side effects, especially for digital solutions. And you have a general problem about data protection. You have to talk about personal rights. And if the path for total is machine learning, you have to talk about traceability, transparency, and explainability, especially for machine learning, that it's not a black box. If you would like to use machine learning for patient care, it has to be transparency. And there is a lot of ethical as well as legal questions combined. So if you are thinking about safety in the process of the development process, you know this line or from different slides actually. So, and you can think about safety and try to identify some safety concerns at advance. Sometimes could be difficult. And if you go in the development process, you have all this ongoing validation and verification processes, which is part of the development process. And you have to apply also the risk management process. This is can you see the ISO norm 14971? And what is really important, you have to try to describe the purpose of your product really early, and then as we learned from the talk prior, you can do the right risk classification. This is really important for what kind of data you need at the very end of your product development. Also, the usability engineering is really important, but it's an important part of the development of a medical device. And when we are talking about pediatric medical device, we have in the context of usability, we have to think about child centricity actually. And sometimes we need some clinical testing. And there's also post-market identification of safety consideration. This is also really important. And if you think about post-market risk identification, there's on one side you have to talk about safety, and on the other side you have to talk about effectiveness. And the manufacturer has a duty for doing this post-marketing surveillance. There's a proactive system. There's also a vigilance system. There's a reactive system for incidents. And the manufacturer are now have to bring more data for their products actually. So what we will see right now is we see more post-marketing follow-up clinical studies, and this is really important also for us as a clinician, as researcher, because they need to get the data from the field, from the clinician, from the patient actually. So we can also contribute to this data to give the manufacturer good data and to set up in combination with the manufacturers really interesting studies to get to this data. And this is really important to provide safety for this medical device which is already in the field. The authorities have also a duty for market surveillance, and at the very end there are also the users and clinicians. They have a reporting, or in Germany they have to report incidents to national authorities. And I think it's also a problem. I think we have there's a big problem of underreporting of incidents. So this could be really get better, that we get more better data about safety concerns about medical devices. So this is a matter of fact where we are living, when we are talking about safety and effectiveness of medical devices for patients. So now I come to the medical device regulation. The medical device regulation hits the world or hits Europe in 2007 and came in full action like this year. And we've heard a lot of the MDR already, and so I can go on a little bit. The MDR in a nutshell, we have now a pool of experts at the EU level for the stricter ex-ante control, and they have put a pool of experts for surgery, for pediatric surgery, and special fields actually. And what we're looking for is the automate database. So we have probably improved transparency for getting data. In the US, they have already this MOD database since years, so it's really nice to have also a European one. And we heard already about the UDI, about the traceability of products. We heard already about implant cards for patients. We have about stricter control of notified bodies. And actually, we heard already about strengthening of the rules for clinical evidence and post-market surveillance. So everything is very good for patient safety, actually. But if you're thinking about the MDR from my perspective, from the user perspective, and probably from the patient perspective, you can do a SWOT analysis, like to see what are the strengths, what are the opportunities, and might there also be some weaknesses and threats. And on the left side, we have the strengths, better understanding of medical device. We'll get more data about medical devices. And it's also an opportunity. We'll get more evidence, and we can, me as a clinician, I can better assess a medical device, is a medical device effective as well as safe. But on the other side, we have potential weaknesses. We have probably a lower product variety, and that also some new innovation will come later to the market, so the delayed market entry of new technology. There are also some threats, actually, so that probably new medical devices will only for high prevalence we will see on the market again, and some border products and this kind of stuff. We will not see new medical devices probably. This might be a threat. And what are the possible consequences? And this is an ongoing discussion like the 2 or 3 last years. We probably will have prolonged innovation product cycles, and new medical technology will not reach the market. We have prior to MDR, we have already a valley of death, but some new products have it really difficult to come out of this valley of death. We have new ideas, new products, and it was really already difficult prior to the MDR to get it to the market. And this, because of the safety aspect of the MDR, will getting much more complicated. And so we have an extended valley of death for medical products. This also will be a market clearing that small companies, family-based companies who are doing medical device production will stop their business because it's too difficult to stay on the market. And we have this might be a possible because there's much less money in the system. There will be much less R&D activity in industry and academia. So if you're thinking about pediatric medical device in the light of the MDR, we have to state the current practical consequence of the MDR as we see this in the hospital. Patient safety is primary and innovation is secondary. And if you are looking for the special field of pediatric medical devices as well as orphan medical devices, they are not specifically addressed in the MDR. And actually, we have also to state before the MDR, these products are also not specifically addressed. So the problem of that the pediatric medical devices are not addressed was prior to the MDR and after the MDR. Now it's not getting a product on the market as to keep the product on the market, it will be much more difficult. So the situation worsens actually. And if you look on the other side, like to the US, we have a totally different system with the FDA. But you can see the EU, if you look for children concerning legal and regulatory framework, you see some note for safeguarding framework for clinical trials in minor, but there are no further law provisions concerning children. And there is also no approval route for small population. But if you look to the US, totally different system compared to the European one. The children are always mentioned since 30 years, actually. There was also the Pediatric Medical Device Safety Improvement Act 2007, and they have also established a approval route for small populations, the HDE. This might be a solution to get special products for special small population on the market. So why is it so different? But you have to state it, it's just different. So reality check. The MDR is working, and I worked at the third largest university hospital in Germany, and I can oversee our what the people are buying here in this our university hospital, and we see indeed a lower product variety. There are some high profile examples with unique clinical importance, but also less product variety overall. That is, I'm looking forward for the next months and years, and we can we will have real data for this. But I can see this for our hospital, the product variety is decreasing, and it's not starting like with in May. It started already 4 years ago that the manufacturer decreasing the product variety in advance to the MDR. So we have also few existing products, and we have also the problem that a lot of existing products have to do a recertification process to the MDR, and it's really difficult and really expensive, and that this might be also a reason why we have probably see next year fewer medical products in the market. And we see also that we have fewer small medical enterprises who will manufacture medical devices. So this is my personal view from my hospital actually. So what are the open questions for the MDR? You can see it national-wide and European-wide, and this has different aspects. We have ethical ones, practical ones, legal ones, and which are economically actually. And the first one is starting with an ethical one, but it's a really practical one. And if you are working in a hospital, you have to ask, can we still care for all patient safety if some products are no longer not available? This is an ethical question, a practical question, and at the very end is also a legal question. And we have to think about having a need for national action for this, if there is a gap which we not can bridge with other solution actually. And what do we have the need for funding the small enterprises in medical technology industry to be further at the market and to be innovative for our medical market? And the biggest question at all, have we a need of adoption of regulatory procedures? Probably. You can all answer the question for yourself, but these are the emerging questions for me at the moment. So what would be my solution actually? We can talk about innovation under controlled trial conditions. So what the first line we think of, I would like to have medical products for our patients. So if there's a new medical device, we have to think the patient comes first, and we would like to shorten the time that a new device will come to the market. We have to shorten the period of time. So sometimes, but at the very beginning, we don't have not enough data to assess the risk actually. So what we would like to have is to provide patients with early access to new procedures actually. So what would be approach to? We would like to introduce innovations into care without proof of benefit. But we have also to do at the same time meaningful clinical trials at the same time. So this would be a solution. That first we start, that might be we have to prove the very proof of safety, but the benefit would be we will see the proof of benefit after also at the end of clinical trials. So this would be a solution. So what we would like to have, well, I think we have the clinic need. We would like to have safe innovation for children, and it starts really with a communication with talk to the families. We have to talk about risk of medical devices, and we have to talk to families to take part in clinical studies actually, so that we get more data. And it starts also with the local ethics committees, with the IRBs, because they overlook clinical studies with children. They have to be a very good one, and they have they don't have to be we should avoid not good design for clinical studies. And you also have to, if you are thinking about innovation for children, you have really early involved regulatory affairs. And we have to adapt regulatory procedures. We have to think about priority review, a fast-track procedure, or we have also to think about orphan devices. Orphan devices also for the adult population, really important. So that we can offer technical solution also for adults with really rare diseases. And what we need is more data. Perhaps we need more studies in children, but not for everything. But we have to think also to get data from adult ones that we can adapt to children. We have to think about simulation. We have to think about modulation. We have to talk about real-world data, real-world evidence. And that's a really good opportunity to close this gap to get more data. But probably we need more children studies, but we have to try new ways like modeling and simulation for getting data to prove safety and efficiency. So I would like to close or summarize. There are a lot of opportunities for pediatric medical devices actually. So technology means always possibilities. We have 3D printing, machine learning, digitalization, nano-sized devices. This is really perfect for children. This means per se personalized medicine for every child actually. But we need new regulatory requirements, and which are all, especially dealing with the safety and speed of the system. And the real aim is to enable safe and efficient and cost-effective innovation for children, that we can close this gap probably for children, that they also have access to current technology, medical technology. So thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ludwig, for your presentation. So I would take this occasion to ask if there are some questions from the audience. I invite all the participants to write down in the chat box any question they would like to address to the speaker. Are there questions?
No, can I make a comment or ask a question to Ludwig?
Yeah,
please. So in your idea, we need really a new legislation, or at least an amended the regulation of medical device to take care of the peculiarity of pediatrics? Or you think we can afford them, for example, putting the attention to the commission of the national body to this kind of products?
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, it's a good question, which we are thinking about all the time. Actually, we have to use probably different ways. Actually, it's also of national importance, I guess. I would be interesting to hear how it is in Italy. So we have to, there are a lot of actions are going on to approach the government to take action actually. So, but it's really difficult to get at the starting line. But there are some actions to combine this effort and to make it public that there might be a problem for the patient, there might be also a problem for the medical device industry, but also the MDR will not be changed, but there might be the possibility of an amendment. And I don't know why they don't thought of the children actually when they did outline the MDR. But the commission is also informed about this problem via different ways actually. And but it's really interesting if you look to the US, there are different solutions actually. And the European system is different to the FDA with negative and positive sides. But why I don't understand why we can amend this for this special group from all medical devices or pediatric medical devices. They would probably get a benefit on some medical devices like the Berlin heart. This is an exo heart for children. It would not be possible to bring it to the market today. This would be a problem really to get new high risk medical devices. Bring it to would be a problem. It was prior to the MDR. It was also a problem that small family companies are not able to bring the needed medical devices to the market. So I think it's also a national problem as well as a European problem. So, but actually the children are not a big market, they're small market share, and it's not market driven like the adult market, so it's so it has to come from the other stakeholders.
Thanks.
Sorry to ask you, is this the MDR is a matter of discussion in Italy, or how is this appreciated by all the stakeholders?
Sorry, what is? It's difficult to argue.
Sorry, do you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, is the MDR a matter of discussion in Italy, or how is perceived the introduction of the MDR? I think there are also some medical device factors in Italy. They will also have problems, I think. So I think the aspect of safety is really good in the MDR, so, but for the reality, and it's really difficult to apply actually.
But we have, of course, as I think in every member state, some discussion of the MDR, but I think that the Italian Ministry of Health worked a lot before the implementation of the regulation, and there is a very good connection between the Ministry of Health and the stakeholder or the industry, so it's working well. There are of course discussion, but everything is going on.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so if there are no further questions or points to be raised, I would really thank you the speakers for this very interesting presentation. And I remind all the participants that all the materials related to the webinar, so the recording of this today presentation as well as the PDF of the presentation, will be available in the F3 website. I also remind you that on the 25th of November, there will be the second webinar, A Magnified Glass in the World of the Medical Device Development. And then I invite all of you to register in this webinar. So thank you so much to participate in this webinar, and I hope to see you to the next webinar.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.